The three dimensions of the religion, and there is a beautiful book that I used to use. It's a bit hard for some students, but maybe you'll find, hopefully you'll find it interesting if you find it in the library and read it, and you have a chapter from it in your binder. It's called The Vision of Islam, and they base it on a hadith of the Prophet that Gabriel came in human form. When angels come and are in contact with humans, even with prophets, they don't come in angelic form. They come in human form because it's hard for, us humans to, even for prophets to perceive certain things. So like nobody could see God face to face. Nobody also could see the angels face to face, so they always dress as humans. So Gabriel came to the Prophet, and the companions were sitting, and they said, a man who looked like clean and beautiful, and even though he's been traveling for long, you couldn't tell that he's been traveling, and then sat with the Prophet and start asking him questions. And from that it's deduced that the religion has three aspects, which is Islam, again, you submit. Iman, that adds the dimension of working on one's faith and bringing rituals alive in one's heart. And when your parents tell you get up and pray, you don't say why, but you pray because you feel like, yes, I need to have this close connection with God. And then Ihsan adds a focus or intention, Neeyah. And Neeyah is an Arabic word that's very important in Islamic practice. So you have the right intention, and without that Neeyah, the works are invalid. So people are directed to reorient their desires. We are human, we are weak, we all have dreams and desires and stuff, but we have to put them in check. And so one should choose one's behavior based on that Taqwa, again, the concept of Taqwa, awareness of God's presence at all times and in all matters and aspects of one's life. So one shouldn't, in the chapter of Vision of Islam, there is the term hawa. And hawa is the same word we use for love and also for air and wind. So it's like, don't follow your own hawa, your inner, whims, because it can direct you to one thing one day and another thing one day. So like, be steadfast and follow the correct. Okay, so what is Ihsan again? So it's the third and deepest dimension of Islam. The literal meaning, again, could include benevolence, doing good, and that's in your book of 40 hadith. Again, it's page 30, number 5. So you can read it later, inshallah. And according to Murat and Chitik, who are a husband and wife team who made that Vision of Islam and other publications, they translate Ihsan as doing what is beautiful. So they use the word beauty and beautiful. And right and good actions make the doer beautiful and nearer to God. So the inner beauty should shine out, like in the story we just read, that it's not the outer trappings, but that what's really inside is what's important. Because God, knows what's in your heart. So doing beautiful acts. Give me examples of beautiful acts. Helping someone. What did you say then?
I was trying to remember the word Zakat.
Zakat, paying charity, okay. Okay. And these are all correct, but also for Muslims, like the most beautiful thing that you can do is like not to reject, not to be from among those who, fall in the sin of rejecting the truth after knowing it. So believe in the Touheed. Touheed comes from Wahid. Wahid is one, so Touheed, the oneness of God. Even though there are 99 attributes or names of God, it doesn't mean that there are 99 different gods that Muslims worship. It's just the qualities of God, as you have touched upon. Very important, God always reminds people to worship Him, but also to be good to one's parents. So you have to love, respect, and care for one's parents. And Susan, for example, is sitting here away from home, tormented about her mother. So, so one has to be always good to the parents, no matter what. Even if they're not believers themselves, if somebody embraces Islam, their parents are not Muslims, that gives you no right to go and say, I'm Muslim now, I'm better than you, you're going to hell if you don't become Muslim like me. No, you still have to be respectful, still, remember that you're the child and they are the parent. And, say prayers for them. But of course, this comes in the, everybody who's following a religion tradition think it's the only way of salvation, but that's another, big, large discussion. Okay, even naming one's children, one should be careful when naming one's children. So usually the names in Arabic have a beautiful meaning. Nur means light, and that's from God, one of 99 names of God. So he's the Nur ad-Din, the light of the faith, and and so on. Muhammad, people use that name, of course, a lot since it has to do with being thankful, and that's the name of the Prophet Muhammad. And Ahmad and Mustafa, and there's a whole list of names for boys and for girls. Maryam, who's mentioned in the Quran by name. Many people get named that in the Muslim world. And Amina, who's the mother of the Prophet, which means also safe. And Amina, which is somebody who's trustworthy, and so on. Okay, and then of course, another way of doing beautiful acts is the ibadat, the worship. And of course, from that ibadat is the zakah, so if you remember that, God gave you your wealth, not to keep it to yourself, but to share it with others. And wealth could be anything. It doesn't have to be material wealth. It could be knowledge that you have. And if you have nothing, being nice and smiling to other people helps, so don't be grouchy. This is all, doing beautiful acts. Okay, so again, the word ihsan comes from husn, and it's a quality of goodness and beauty. And in Arabic, there is a name Muhsin. One of my uncles was Muhsin, and so Muhsin comes from, again, somebody who's doing something beautiful. And it comes from Al-Muhsin, which is God's name. Usually God's names will have Al, the, He's the knowledgeable, the Muhsin, and so on. Okay. So in the Quran, there is a verse that translates into do good as God has done good to you. So what good has God done to us? He created us. Most of us are lucky, to have 2 eyes and 2 ears and all the things we share with the birds. But we should be happy, that we can see and smell and taste and understand and so on. And be thankful for that stuff. Okay. So to worship God is to be His servant and do what He asks you to do. And that's why lots of Muslims' names are Abd al-Muhsin, Abd al-Alim, Abd. And there is Abd al-Nur, I guess, too. So you are the servant of God. And this service should be voluntary. Like you should freely pray because you want to pray and give zakah because you want to give zakah. And, you shouldn't feel like it's a burden. And otherwise it wouldn't count, And Muslims hope to really worship God and God alone. And, because there is this hadith, again, from Nawawi hadith, number 2, is that أَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِنْ لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَهُوَ يَرَاكَ. Worship God as if you see Him, because even if you do not really see Him, you see His signs in the world, but like you don't see God face to face, but He sees you. So God is always watching. So again, heed and remind yourself of that. So, so living the ihsan explains how human beings can attain nearness to God, who is the real. And one should try, like yesterday I was reading in Ihya Ulumuddin by Al-Ghazali, which again, I'll tell you his dates and all that. So he's one of the people who's considered like a revival of the religion. He lived from, as you will see in the slide down the row, he lived from 1058 to 1111. And he has a very interesting long life story, but he was the one who tried to bring together like Sharia Islam with, spirituality. And it's a long book, but we have here in the library abridgment of it, and a big part of it was talking about like one should work on getting rid of one's desires, greed, haughtiness, arrogance, miserliness, and so on. So you cleanse yourself all the time. You're working, instead of going around advising people what to do, work on yourself first. And then people, maybe when they see how beautiful you are and how your actions are good, then they would follow you, instead of, it's easy to tell others what to do. Okay, a very important concept in Islam is sincerity, and yesterday, or in the Quran session, bless you, there is a surah called the Sincerity or the Ikhlas. So that also comes within the dimension of ihsan, that people be aware of God's presence and act appropriately, but also they should think, feel, and intend appropriately. So this is the true, ikhlas, and true sincerity. And this is something, again, you have to work on building. So one should try and strive that there should be no contradiction between what they think and what they do. And again, this harmony is called in Arabic ikhlas, and the opposite would be either nifaq, which is hypocrisy, or riya, which is to display oneself in a way that doesn't represent your true self. So again, going to the mosque excessively so other people would be impressed, paying charity just so people would say, you're good and generous and so on, all that, or trying and pretending you're fasting, or fasting and cursing. Cursing doesn't work in Islam. So there are certain no-nos the same way that there's the 10 Commandments. So of course in Islam there are certain things you shouldn't do, and one of them is not to curse, which is unfortunately in the modern time is hard for lots of people not to do.